Lawmakers pass a bill to adjust cross-harbour tolls for 3 tunnels. 5 more mainland medical schools have made it to Hong Kong's list of recognised qualifications. Good evening and welcome to TVB News. The Legislative Council has approved a bill to adjust cross-harbour tolls for various tunnels. Starting August the 2nd, the cross-harbour tunnel will see its toll for private cars increase to $30. A time-varying toll system will be in place by the end of this year. Jackie Lin has the details.
I declare the motion passed.
With that, it confirms the wide-ranging adjustments in Hong Kong's cross-harbour toll fares. This as the government is set to take back the Western Harbour crossing in early August, paving the way for the amendment bill to adjust tolls and ease cross-harbour tunnel congestion. Now the bill's passing means fixed tolls for private cars using the Western Harbour crossing will be lowered to $60 in the first phase. For the cross-harbour tunnel and Eastern Harbour crossing, the toll will be $30. These 2 tunnels will charge even higher fares during rush hours at $40, a time-varying tolling system to be in place by the end of this year. Some lawmakers back the plan.
And if we can reduce the number of vehicles during peak times, encouraging motorists to go earlier and leave later, then that will help alleviate the traffic.
Others hope the government can do more.
Diverting traffic among the 3 tunnels is just a false proposition. Parking fees are very high, which are higher than the toll charges. So people will not go to work and leave work accordingly in order to take advantage of new toll plans.
Under the plan, taxis will be tolled $25. Meanwhile, a fixed toll of $50 for minibuses and other commercial vehicles at all 3 tunnels. Transport sector lawmaker Frankie Yik tabled an amendment bill to reduce the tolls for all commercial vehicles to $20 at the Western Harbour crossing and Cross Harbour tunnel.
$50嘅收費咧，加幅係達到4倍之多。
The new toll set at $50, they will pay 4 times more, increase of 400% in one go.
Meanwhile, Secretary for Transport and Logistics Lam Sai-hung said the government will strive to implement the new rail and road proposals alongside the Kao Yi Chau Artificial Islands Development Project. It would include the construction of the city's 4th cross-harbour tunnel. Jackie Lin, TVB News.
Authorities are looking into extending the use of the elderly healthcare voucher scheme to the mainland. This, as well as the current manpower shortage in the medical sector, were among the main issues discussed during the ante-chamber meeting between government officials and lawmakers today.
Deputy Chief Secretary for Administration Warner Chuk led Secretary for Health Lo Chung Mao and Secretary for Labour and Welfare Chris Sun to the 11th ante-chamber meeting. Lawmakers and officials shared ideas on healthcare cooperation with the mainland, as well as how to cope with the manpower shortage in the sector. Among suggestions from lawmakers, Dominic Lee's proposal to import nurses from the mainland. Lee Sai-wing suggested extending the use of elderly healthcare vouchers to the mainland so that senior citizens from Hong Kong can make use of the vouchers and consider retirement plans there. Health Chief Lo Chung Mao said he's looking into expanding the coverage of these vouchers, including in cities outside of the Greater Bay Area, such as Fujian.
We are now developing the criteria for approving these additional healthcare voucher utilization hospitals, and we will soon be accepting applications. The intention is to especially make sure that these spots for the use of elderly healthcare voucher can be linked with our future spots for the elderly healthcare homes in order to facilitate the healthcare service for these elderly people across the border.
Also, the government announced today a new batch of recognized medical qualifications. The medical schools of 5 more mainland universities, including Fudan University, Tsinghua University, Sun Yat-sen University, Shanghai Jiaotong University, and Zhejiang University, have made it to the list. So far, 100 non-local medical qualifications are recognized by the Hong Kong government. That means non-locally trained doctors from the institutions on that list can apply to practice in the city.
I'm quite confident that this addition will be able to facilitate more non-locally trained doctors to return to Hong Kong and come to Hong Kong to support our healthcare services and to create a positive cycle for more healthcare workers to work in the hospital authority and our public healthcare service.
Low stressed many medical institutions on the mainland teach in both Chinese and English, and the authorities will make sure the quality of these doctors are up to par.
Chief Executive John Lee's first anniversary in office is just a few days away. In an interview with state media, Lee said he must remain vigilant against forces that prey upon the failure of one country, two systems in the SAR. Speaking in an interview with CCTV via video link, the city's leader looked back at his first year on the job, which he found meaningful. On housing, he admitted the average living space per person in Hong Kong is smaller than in many other places. Lee said his goal is to produce more land and increase housing supply, and he has proposed that newly built subsidized flats should be no smaller than 26 square meters each. The CE also talked about how some forces do not want one country, two systems to succeed in Hong Kong, so the city must remain vigilant against these destructive forces. The United States took aim at Russia's Wagner Group by imposing sanctions on companies it accused of being engaged in the funding of the mercenary force. The U.S. Treasury Department said the sanctions were imposed on 4 companies in the United Arab Emirates, Central African Republic, and Russia. The companies were said to be engaged in illicit gold dealings to fund the militia to sustain and expand its armed forces, including in Ukraine and some countries in Africa. The U.S. State Department said ahead of the announcement that the action against Wagner was unrelated to the group's aborted mutiny last weekend. A State Department spokesman outlined Washington's plans to continue monitoring the Wagner Group's activities.
We continue to closely track Wagner's activities both in Ukraine and in Africa and in wherever in the world they may operate. We continue to look closely at the actions they take that are against the interests of the countries where they operate, and we will continue to take actions to hold them accountable.
Fu Cong, the Chinese envoy to the European Union, hinted that Beijing could support Ukraine's aims of reclaiming its initial post-Soviet 1991 territory. When asked by Al Jazeera and 2 other media outlets about Kyiv's bid to reclaim this territory as part of a peace plan with Russia, Fu said, "I don't see why not." He elaborated that China respects the territorial integrity of all nations, adding that when Beijing established relations with former Soviet republics, Ukraine's 1991 borders were among what was agreed at the time. Still, Fu referred to this as a historical issue that needs to be negotiated by Russia and Ukraine. The Chinese Foreign Ministry reiterated Beijing's calls for a political settlement of the Ukraine crisis. Spokesperson Mao Ning clarified China's position on Ukraine after Fu's comments. She said she is not aware of the specific statement by the ambassador, but China's position is consistent and clear. Mao added that Beijing hopes the Crimea issue will be resolved through political means. The UN Security Council has urged Israel and the Palestinians to avoid actions that can further inflame tensions in the volatile West Bank. The statement was backed by both the United States and Russia in a moment of unity on a divisive issue. Daniel Rao tells us more.
The statement followed what UN Mideast envoy Tor Venesland called an alarming spike in violence in the West Bank that led to numerous Palestinian and Israeli casualties.
I remain gravely concerned by the escalating spiral of violence we are witnessing in the occupied West Bank. I condemn all acts of violence against civilians, including all acts of terror, which exacerbate mistrust and undermine a peaceful resolution to the conflict. The violence must stop, and all perpetrators should be held accountable.
He warns the Council that unless decisive steps are taken now to rein in the violence, there is a significant risk that events could deteriorate further. Venesland added he was particularly alarmed by the extreme levels of violence from Israeli settlers. He warned that Israel's relentless expansion of settlements is fueling violence and impeding access by Palestinians to their land and resources. Venezuela said this is threatening the viability of a future Palestinian state. US Deputy UN Ambassador Robert Wood called on Israel to refrain from building settlements, evicting Palestinians and demolishing their homes, and on both parties to refrain from terrorism and incitement to violence. Russia's UN Ambassador Vasilina Benzia also expressed serious concern at the escalating violence. JUN, China's permanent representative to the world body, said Beijing stands ready to work with the international community to actively contribute to a comprehensive, just and lasting solution to the Palestinian question. That's in addition to the realization of the peaceful coexistence of Palestine and Israel. Riyad Mansour, the Palestinian UN ambassador, accused the Israeli government of making a state for the settlers in place of the Palestinian state. Israel's UN ambassador Gilad Erdan accused the council of underreporting the 3,500 attacks he said the Palestinians have committed against Israelis since the beginning of the year. He condemned the violence against Palestinian civilians and said Israel is working tirelessly to find and hold those responsible accountable. Dan Royal, TVB News.
Still to come on tonight's news. New York will become the first major city in the US to introduce congestion pricing to reduce traffic jams. And locally, a sharp rise in the number of theft cases. Welcome back to TVB News. New road tolls in New York City have been given the green light and could be implemented as soon as the spring of 2024. Drivers in Manhattan will pay the new tolls as part of an effort to reduce traffic congestion and improve air quality. New York will be the first major city in the U.S. to charge big tolls to drive into the most visited areas, which includes the Central Business District. Tracy Furness has more.
Gridlock, a daily occurrence on the streets of Manhattan. But from early next year, road tolls will be rolled out in Manhattan's busiest district south of 60th Street, which includes the Central Business District. Under the program, drivers could be charged as much as $23 a day to enter this area of Manhattan. The exact amount is still being decided. Drivers coming into New York City already pay big tolls to use bridges and tunnels that connect the island to the mainland. And the new tolls within Manhattan will be on top of that. These tolls could generate a yearly sum of $1 billion, which would be used to finance borrowing to upgrade the subway, bus and commuter rail systems.
This is a viable funding source that is going to help us sustain the level of service and even enhance it for commuters who've not yet discovered the ease and the benefit of using trains that may be right there for them, but they're just so conditioned to driving the cars.
But some drivers are not convinced.
Nobody can afford that. It's a lot of money. So they want us to drive. I'm asthmatic. I don't want to be on a train. It's not healthy for me. So that's why I choose to drive.
But the New York governor sees it differently.
How about 15 to 20% fewer vehicles in the Central Business District every single day? Less noise, less honking, less gridlock. How about less air pollution, lower carbon emissions, lower speeds, fewer crashes? I don't mind losing that.
The new road tolls will bring the city in line with places like London, Singapore and Stockholm, who have similar successful tolling programs in congested business districts. Tracy Furness, TVB News.
Locally, police recorded more than 7,000 theft cases in the first 4 months of this year, an increase of almost 40% year-on-year. Among them, almost 1,000 cases involved supermarkets, with some taking advantage of self-checkout counters. Veronica Lin has more.
From January to April this year, the police received reports of more than 7,000 theft cases, an increase of more than 2,000 cases compared with the same period last year. Shoplifting accounted for 35% of all cases, and almost 1,000 of them involved supermarkets. During the pandemic, self-checkout counters at supermarkets became a crime hotspot.
Chief Inspector Troy Wingyuk from the Crime Prevention Bureau said some residents were in a fluke mindset and hoped to get away with not paying for groceries.
They would normally end up being caught by staff, who would then alert the police. While self-checkouts can save on manpower, Troy recommends assigning staff to monitor them. The police appealed to the public against breaking the law and remember to scan and pay for all items. As for other types of shoplifting, officers said culprits would often use decoy tactics to commit offenses. Choi said criminals would often work together as a team, with a few talking to vendors, while others would steal items and leave via unguarded exits. Using decoy tactics, she said, thieves evaded detection by stealing from a shop that has large or multiple exits.
The police called on shop owners to install CCTV cameras. They also remind the public to watch their belongings, especially in densely populated areas such as Mong Kok. Ron Kalin, TVB News.
The whistleblower for the Shot into Central Link scandal in 2018 has slammed the $40,000 fine on the main contractor for being too lax. Engineer Jason Poon, who chairs concern group ChinaNet Monitor, questioned if the government has tried its best to keep the MTL Corporation accountable for the construction blunder. Lawmaker Michael Tian, who's a former chairman of the Kowloon Canton Railway Corporation, said he had heard from sources that the government was trying to put the saga to rest. In a statement released this morning, the government said no comments would be made. But in the afternoon, the administration issued another statement criticizing insinuations over the relationship between the rail giant and the government as irresponsible. It said any attempts to smear the government won't come to fruition. A 20-year-old man hacked into the news app system of Television Broadcasters Limited last year and delivered push notifications. He was convicted of criminal damage and sentenced to 200 hours of community service. Defendant Sheikh Chun-hei appeared in court for his verdict today. In May last year, he unlawfully entered the TVB News app system and issued 23 abnormal push notifications within 21 minutes. A police investigation revealed that he was, in fact, a staff member and a student at the time. Sheikh pleaded not guilty to the charge of criminal damage, but was convicted of the offence. Magistrate Winnie Lau said the defendant had issued false messages to mislead viewers and the incident had caused damage to the broadcaster's image and reputation. Considering his young age, and this is his first conviction, the court sentenced him to 200 hours of community service. That's the news. Thanks for joining us.